Problems. We'll cover the latest from the presidential campaign trail. And Detroit is the first American city to win a UNESCO design designation. What's it mean? Today is Sunday, August 28, 2016, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. So good to be back with you after our involuntary sabbatical brought on by the Olympic Games. Don't get me wrong, I love the Olympics more than just about anyone I know, but the past 3 Sundays have been chock full of things to talk about, so we're going to dig into a number of them this morning. First and foremost, as we prepare now to move into September this week, the home stretch of the presidential election campaigns, where are we? I mean, I can read the polls, I know where we are in that sense, but where are we in this conversation on how to move forward as a nation? Spend just 5 minutes on whatever social media platform you prefer, and while you see an electorate that is fully engaged, is anybody listening anymore? Are any minds being changed? Or are we just living in our own silos of self-fertilizing political immersion? We're going to talk about that this morning. We're also going to talk about something that has grown mysteriously silent. Remember that second crossing between Detroit and Windsor, the Gordie Howe Bridge? There certainly don't seem to be any shovels in the ground. What is happening? And a little later on, it may have escaped your notice when Detroit was named as a UNESCO City of Design. Even if you did know about it, did you know that Detroit is the only American city to be so designated? It turns out it has meant a lot to other cities like Montreal and Buenos Aires. What could it mean here? It's all this morning on Flashpoint. Self-fertilizing. You can use that, Randy. Let's get things started with this morning's roundtable. Good to have with us again columnist from the Metro Times and commentator for Michigan Public Radio, Jack Lessenberry. Political consultant Adolph Mongo is back with us. Former State Senate Majority Leader Randy Richardville here again, as is editorial chief for the Detroit News, Nolan Finley. Gang, thanks very much for being here. And Nolan, let me start with that question that I just posed. I don't think it seems to matter how many more emails come out from Hillary Clinton. I don't think it matters if Donald Trump walks back his immigration plan as he did this past week. I don't think any minds, it doesn't feel to me like anybody's listening in a changeable way. Are we just in for 3 more months of everybody just sort of repeating themselves?
Well, I mean, you could look at it that way, but if you look at the polls, there's still a lot of people who are saying they can't vote for either one of these candidates. It's somewhere in the area of 22, 25% in most polls to say, not that they're undecided, they've decided they don't like these candidates. And if you look at the third-party candidates, they're steadily rising in the poll. So, yeah, I think there is a lot going on in the mind of the electorate, but it's just not what we're used to seeing. Still a lot of play.
Adolph, as if you're looking at this as a political consultant, you get 2 candidates who just don't have really high likability factors. It's the darndest thing. So where does that middle ground go that's out there not?
There's no middle ground. I don't know if people are going to flock to the Green Party or the Red Party or whatever party they call themselves. Donald Trump, people that don't like him, not going to vote for him, not going to change their mind. Hillary Clinton, she's the devil, we know. So that's what folks...
That's where we are.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And she don't excite a lot of folks either. So,
Jack, if there's ever been a time for a third-party candidate to kind of maybe shoot the gap, shoot the middle, and get some traction, you would think it might be now. What do you think?
I don't think it'll happen. I think it'd be interesting if the Koch brothers threw a lot of money behind the Libertarians, then you might see something. But what happens at the end, people vote for the lesser of 2 evils, or the evil of 2 lessers, depending on. But I think the first debate is going to be important because a lot of people aren't like us. They're sort of minimally paying attention. They're going to look at that debate and see what they think.
Does Gary Johnson deserve a spot in that debate?
Well, the rules are he has to be 15%, and he's anywhere near that.
Not there yet at all. Well, Lorraine, let's start with some of the issues. Let's dig into where we are on some of these things. We've watched a real interesting campaign about Hillary Clinton's health. We've got doctors being asked to diagnose her from video on some of the cable news channels right now. Is this a legitimate thing?
I don't think most of those things are very legitimate at all that are happening right now. A lot of them are just to grab attention of some sort. But I would like to jump on what was said a little bit earlier. You know, the third-party candidate, there may not be one that can come out and win, but there can be one that affects this election.
It can change things,
and, you know,
sure.
You go back to the first George Bush with Ross Perot, got something between 15 and 20%, and that changed that election. You had the most popular president in history, just won a war, and came out and lost. So I'm really looking at the third parties maybe to take votes away, and who loses the most votes from these people that nobody wants to vote for.
You're supporting Donald Trump. Are you concerned that Gary Johnson ends up being enough of a distraction for conservative voters?
I have concerns about that, yes, but I think that Donald's message is going to continue to resonate. I like the fact that his campaign has picked up a lot of speed here in Michigan. We've got the convention coming up this weekend. I think you're going to see some more people turn his way. The average Joe sitting at the table is going to say, I guess that's who I got to vote for.
To his comments that he made in Michigan, Adolph, you and I have talked a lot on this program about whether the Democratic Party just sort of assumes support from African Americans.
And I've been one of the biggest.
You've talked a lot about it.
I've been one of the biggest critics of the Democratic Party. But
so here comes Donald Trump saying, what do you got to lose?
To go before a crowd of all white folks waving Confederate flags and telling us that everybody that's African American, unemployed, uneducated, criminals, etc., is offensive. And I find if he's going to have a message for me and for black voters, come to Detroit, talk to us. But Donald Trump is playing the game of let me get those white folks.
Well, he is coming to Detroit again next week. And
yeah,
I find that somewhat curious because, you know, he obviously sees something here we're not seeing in the polls, because the polls, both we did and the Free Press and others, show him pretty significantly behind here. And yet this will mark his third visit in just a few weeks. I think they're seeing some opportunity there.
No, do you think he's gonna get some? Do you really think he's gonna get some black votes after what he said about black people?
I don't think any Republican has gotten any black votes, and
because
Trump is chasing the theory. It goes back to Barry Goldwater. There's this hidden conservative vote that they never come out and vote. And they'll come out and vote if they're sufficiently motivated. And in Trump's case, it's disaffected, white, you know, outwork manufacturing workers, and there may be some truth in that, but it's hard for me to see how he gets enough to get a majority.
But one thing that, you know, we haven't talked much about, you know, after the convention, when he took the big plunge in the polls, he was down by 10, 12 points in nationwide polls in all the key states, and sort of the narrative was, you know, Trump's falling in the polls and he's got to do this and he's got to do that. Well, if you look in recent days, his deficit to Hillary Clinton's been cut in more than half, and the LA Times poll had him ahead this weekend, and I can't quite figure out what's going on, whether it's Trump surging or whether these email releases showing the conflicts between Hillary Clinton's State Department and the Clinton Foundation are doing some real damage. But this race is suddenly closed up, and nobody seems to want to talk about that.
The Clinton Foundation, Jack, where are you on that? Should they just shut it down while we're in a campaign? Or does that admit a kind of, is that sort of admitting a kind of guilt over it?
One would think they would recuse themselves or put it into some kind of a blind trust to get themselves out of administering it. But I think it's quite confusing and nobody really understands it. They ought to do something probably to insulate themselves if they can.
Bernie Sanders, of course, memorably said that nobody cares about the emails, and Adolph, they keep coming out, 15,000 more.
It's a whole lot of emails. But people say they don't care if Donald Trump releases his tax
returns.
There's no question. Donald Trump, how can he tell Hillary Clinton to close down that foundation when he won't release his taxes?
Randy, shouldn't he release his tax returns as every other presidential candidate has done?
Yeah, I think he will.
You think he will? Anything, you don't think there's anything there of interest to us?
I can't imagine what a tax return for a billionaire looks like. So I'm sure that there are people looking through and say, we have to look because there are going to be people trying to make something out of anything that's found. So there are a lot of things to look through and be prepared to.
It could be he didn't pay any taxes. Or
it could be. Could be.
It could be he's not a billionaire.
Well, it could be too, but I think you will see him before this campaign is over.
Take a quick break. We come back, we'll continue with a little more campaign talk. Also want to dig into what is going on with the plans for a new bridge between Michigan and Ontario. Back with more on Flashpoint in just a minute.
I know the Clinton.
This is what precision feels like.
Welcome back, Flashpoint. Before we move on from campaign talk, Nolan, I'm curious as to what you think. What's the Republican establishment going to do, since you've got a whole bunch of them who are just sitting this out? What are they going to do either now or down the line strategically?
Right now they're going to try to save the Congress, and I think that's where a good deal of the money's going, and a lot of the donors who have said, including the Koch brothers and some other really big Republican funders, have said, I can't give money to Donald Trump, are giving money in these congressional races in hopes of saving the Congress in case of a Trump rout. And so I think that's the short-term goal. Long-term, they're going to try to get their party back, and I would expect they're going to change the whole nominating process so that
you're going to have Republican superdelegates?
You might have that.
It'll look more like a Democratic
You might
party?
have that, but I think you'll have a more active party in terms of discouraging a 15, 16-man field.
What if he don't go away?
Pardon?
What if Donald Trump don't go away?
Yeah,
I don't think Donald Trump is going to just go.
If Donald Trump is crushed in this election, Donald Trump's going away. If Donald Trump loses, he's going away. You're not going to get a loser coming
But if
back.
he wins, then I don't think the establishment and the Republican Party are going to have much to say. I mean, the guy's going to be the head of the party for at least 4 years, maybe 8.
If he wins, we have a nightmare in America.
I don't think it's a nightmare. I think it's a dream come true.
We'd have
It's
a
an
nightmare.
American dream. That's
We're,
what it is.
we're headed toward a nightmare in either
dream.
case.
Well, maybe not your dream.
Randy, when something happens like this past week, when all of a sudden the centerpiece of his campaign, which he talked about kicking all these, sending all these illegals home, and now he's talking about finding a way to let them stay, you have no misgivings or concerns over?
No. In fact, I think it goes back to what I've been saying all along. Donald Trump in front of a podium is one kind of guy. In a back room where he's working things out with people, I've met with him, I've talked with him, he's much more thoughtful, he listens much more to the people around him. Yes, that's what he led with at the campaign, but I think what people will see is Donald Trump can back down and change his mind and actually do something better than what his original proposal was.
And Coulter thinks he'll lose his people if he does that. There's a piece today saying
I mean, that's sort of his conundrum, isn't it?
No, I think
that
those
other
people
guy you're
will
describing is the one who's leading in the polls.
No, the reason that those people will stay is because Donald Trump says what he believes, and he's not a politician. They like him for that. It's the anti-politician vote that he picks up.
This election,
where else are you going to go?
He's not a politician. This is just a bald-faced liar.
This election's not going to be decided by the positions of either candidate. This is a vote against election. And so which candidate has the most people that hate him or her is going to lose, and the other one's going to win.
In our time left, I did want to move on to a topic that, Jack Lessenberry, you've written about quite a bit. Where are we on building another bridge?
Well, plainly stalled, and there are concerns frankly, about Mayor Duggan's relationship with Matty Maroon, who's trying to stall this out. And there's concerns in Canada over whether the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau is as committed to
different government now.
That's right.
Right.
It's not going to be built.
Not going to happen?
They say in 2020 it was going to be a bridge. They can't build a bridge by 2020 or 2023.
No, you're right about that, but it's going to be built.
And the Canadians said they was going to spend $500 million. Their dollar is dead, so we're talking about $1 billion. I don't think Trudeau and the Liberals that got elected is going to want to spend that money.
It reminds me of Vicente Fox, you know, when he said some things about building a wall and them paying for it in Mexico, that I'm wondering if the administration in Canada is willing to pay for something that they had, again, a previous administration said.
That was the...
They're going to build it because they have to build it. It's not going to be 2020. I'm going to guess it's 2023. They have to build that.
What we were told there under the previous administration was it was the most important infrastructure project in Canada.
That's right. And they really haven't changed it. They say they're committed to it. They're dragging their feet. But again, one of these days, Matty Maroon will die. He's 89 years old, and there's questions about will his son be as committed. But you have to remember, this is the most important economic border crossing between the two nations.
In the two countries, no doubt.
And the Ambassador Bridge is getting close to 100 years old. It's outdated. You got to replace it.
Nolan, what's your take on what's happening?
Well, it should have been underway already, and a lot of the reasons it's not is because the Obama administration hasn't committed to it. The money for those new custom plans hasn't been given. I mean, they should have moved quickly once approval was granted to get this thing started. The longer you delay, the more obstacles that are going to come up.
Let them build that second span. Matty Maroon and them know how to run a bridge.
The Canadians will never do that. It's an environmental hazard.
That's the other side of this, though, is that eventually,
let them build a second span.
Don't they have to be able to replace the bridge that they own?
Yeah, but where it is now, the Maroons, they should have a backup. Yeah, but there's 12 stoplights or 15 stoplights between that and 401.
Not
the new
much
bridge goes right
there.
on. They've got the approaches done. They're going to build a new bridge. It's just a question of when and why they're delaying it.
2050. 2006.
Well, that's the other thing, Randy. It's a lot of jobs that would
10,000 good-paying jobs for 4 or 5 years.
Well, for Canadians.
But I just well, I don't think it would be from what I read, but I just have to wonder right now, is this really going to happen or not? I don't know without the full support of the Canadian government, again, a brand new administration,
yes.
If they're going to move forward or not. Yeah, I'm concerned about that.
That deal may be reworked. The Canadians may not be as willing to cover our half of the construction cost, and perhaps they shouldn't. I've felt from the beginning that we ought to pay our own share rather than sort of mortgage this thing out.
And a lot of Canadians are saying that, saying, why are we building a bridge for the U.S.?
It's not like we're
the Canadian government has not said in any way that it's backing off. There's speculation on that, but they have not said. Trudeau has said he's committed to the bridge, but people are worried because there doesn't seem to be the pressure.
It's interesting that you read the Windsor paper
yes.
every day. It is a topic there. Over here, not
their economy
not
is
much.
So dependent on it. But if that thing fell down, the Ambassador Bridge fell down, it would do more damage than 9/11 to our two countries' economies, especially Canada.
But it's not going to fall.
It's getting older.
Yeah.
Pieces have. Okay, we got to run. Gang, thanks very much for being here. We come back about UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but UNESCO also has an eye on design and designates design cities. And there is only one in the United States, and it's Detroit. Well, now that we have that designation, what does it mean? Let's talk about it with Olga Stella. She's been on Flashpoint in her former role with the DEGC, but now the head of Detroit's Creative Corridor Center. Olga, good to have you back.
Thanks.
Congratulations on your new gig, which
Thank you.
You and I have talked about off the air quite a bit. But let's start with what it means to be the only design city in America, according to UNESCO.
So it means that we've been recognized for a legacy of design assets, for the things that are going on here right now in the design community, and the opportunity to use those assets and that energy to making a more sustainable and equitable city.
My wife and I used to have this running joke about places being designated Tree City, USA, because it seems to be a lot of them and it doesn't take much, and I'm not sure it meant much. But it's up to us, I guess, to now make this mean something, right?
Exactly. And it was a long road to get here. My predecessor at the Detroit Creative Corridor Center, Matt Clayson, and the team, our advisory board, worked with to really put together the application, worked to really make the case to the other UNESCO cities of design that we were worthy, that there was something real here. And now we have to live up to that. And a big part of this is that Detroit Creative Corridor Center is the steward of the designation, and it's our job to try to corral the troops. We need a coalition here. We need to really all work together to bring it to life.
It needs to be more than a plaque. And as I said at the beginning of the program, other cities really can point to very specific growth and things that it's meant, like Montreal and Buenos Aires. Tell me about what it ends up meaning.
So in each city, it's a little different. And I think Montreal is a really great example. There, when they got the designation, they really wanted to show a physical transformation in their city. And so they put all their efforts towards that physical transformation. And the city itself pumped $225 million of public investment through 50 design competitions. And each one of those design competitions changed the culture, created jobs in the local economy by hiring local designers, and physically changed their city. In a city like Berlin, it was about entrepreneurship, and they focused their efforts on really building an entrepreneurial culture that supported design businesses. Over 8 years, they grew the number of design businesses by 26%. So in each place, we got to pick what's going to be our change. What is a thing 10 years from now we look back at Detroit and say, this is what we did here.
Well, and it comes at a time when we are kind of reinventing the place a little bit. So what do you want to see it be? What is our thing?
Well, I don't think that it's for me to decide.
Oh, I think it's totally Olga Stella's place.
No, I think this is one of those opportunities where there are leaders in the business community, leaders in academia, leaders in so many interesting things happening in the community around community-driven design. This is our opportunity to come together and decide together We have a series of design assets, whether it's the product design and manufacturing, whether it's the urban design and the architecture and things that are happening, looking at our vacant land. How are we going to use all this vacant land? How are we going to repurpose these buildings? How are we going to repurpose our streets, which are too wide, right? There's real opportunities, even systems and service design. You know, Mayor Duggan is transforming city government. There's a huge opportunity for service design.
This is really interesting because it's so easy to get locked into what the word design means, and you start to drill down and you realize that it means a million different things, especially in a city like ours.
So I think people often think of design and they focus on, you know, the physical, right? A product, a building, and they often associate it with being elite or, you know, high end. And the reality around design, and I've spent the last 8 months talking to designers, really, you know, trying to learn this. Design is a process. It's about creating a solution, and it's really about the user. You're doing something to solve a problem for someone. And so it can be in architecture, urban design. It can be about creating a great product. It can be in creating a great service, helping people figure out how to navigate a service. And I think what's really exciting about Detroit, and the reason why we were picked, is that we have what people would look at as challenges or liabilities, but those are really opportunities. Our vacant land, all that kind of pent up know-how in the manufacturing sector that maybe could be activated a little bit more. These opportunities to address some of our social service and systems issues, those are all opportunities where design can make a difference.
It also very much, though, connects us to our heritage, because for all of our understanding that we're a blue-collar city, those blue-collar jobs were putting together these articles that were the product of masterful design. It was all about design all along.
That's exactly right.
Wasn't it?
I mean, this is, you know, you look back to the legacy of modernism in Detroit, you know, at Cranbrook and Eero Saarinen and the Eames and, you know, all of that. Even our sister cities along the west side of the state with Herman Miller and Hayworth. I mean, design is very much part of our legacy. And when we've talked to people and looked at that historical aspect, I mean, for crying out loud, we have a museum dedicated to design. People don't think of the Henry Ford that way.
But that's really what it is,
It's a product design, and they collected great objects of design, whether it's product or place, right? So this is our legacy, and I think now is the moment for us to do something with it.
Exciting moment to capture it. Olga, thanks very much for the conversation. Always good to have you here. Great to have you here as well. Meet the Press coming up next. Have a great week, and we'll meet you right back here next week for Flashpoint.